I want to quickly bring in Abhishek Bhalla into this conversation. Abhishek, describe to us steps that China has taken. So we saw bluff, we saw bluster, and China literally warning the United States of America. You had Xi Jinping say that if you play with fire, you will burn yourself. But it appears that bluff and bluster has been called out. What steps is Beijing taking now, Abhishek?
Gaurav, it remains to be seen whether this is just intimidating tactics or real military action on ground. This is exactly the standard operating procedure that China follows when it comes to military matters. We've seen it over the last 2 years in Ladakh, where, it was military drills, exercises that were being used as guides to move ahead and take military action. And something very similar, I gave that an analogy because something very similar is happening here right now, where China is talking about taking military action, but what that military action is obviously not clear. And, in the lead up to the visit, Chinese had been speaking a similar language. They were saying that consequences will have to be borne by the US. Now that the visit has finally happened, it remains to be seen what next. It clearly seems like those tactics that China is good at, playing mind games. We'll have to wait and watch what really pans out.
I have details of some of the military exercises that will be carried out. We are told that tanks are rolling out. We are told fighter jets are out, ships and submarines and amphibious exercises. And these are to be held. Air drills in the north, south, west and southeast of the island. And this clearly is a big signal. Stay with me. We'll get you much more on this big story. But there's more breaking news that's coming in. It's an evening of very fast-paced developments as Nancy Pelosi lands in Taipei. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs on Tuesday issued a statement on Speaker of the US House of Representatives Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. China has said Pelosi's visit is a violation of the One China principle. China has also said that this infringes on China's sovereignty and territorial integrity. China then goes on to say that Taiwan remains an inalienable and integral part of China. US is attempting to use Taiwan to contain China. US moves are like playing with fire, extremely dangerous. I quickly want to cut across to Shiv Arur, my colleague, joining us with more on this big story. Shiv, you've been watching these developments very closely, the military maneuvers on ground, the Chinese rhetoric, and Nancy Pelosi still landing in Taiwan. What now, Shiv? And the statement that comes from Beijing.
Belligerence, as expected, Gaurav, from China, because remember, in the entire run-up to Nancy Pelosi's arrival in Taiwan, all that China has done is ratchet up the tensions, and paint this big aura of threat and of retaliation. Now that Pelosi has landed, the ball is squarely in China's court. And even though there is a perception that this was all fire and brimstone, a lot of psychological warfare and mind games of the kind that the world is, pretty used to, and the US is certainly used to it, and so is Taiwan. The fact is, China, at a time like this, when the US has actually taken a break from 25 years of history by landing a US Air Force jet with Nancy Pelosi in Taiwan, has basically signaled not only to the region but the entire world that the world not only recognizes China as a huge threat to the world, but also recognizes that its threats may not always need to be taken seriously. What the US has done now is sort of bell the cat as far as China is concerned. China, remember, is holding a series of military exercises around Taiwan at this point of time, but is looking pretty helpless because it's talking about resolute military action, retaliation and things like that. But what possible military action can they really take, against the United States? Are they talking about action against the United States? Are they talking about Taiwan? For For 73 years, they haven't taken any military action against Taiwan. We've explained that separately.
Yes.
So the ball proverbially, militarily, politically is squarely in China's court right now. And with each passing hour, they're probably looking for some kind of an honorable exit, an explanation for why all this belligerence hasn't translated into something kinetic, something economic, or something else.
But is that likely to happen? Either something kinetic or something economic. Some sanctions have already been imposed or announced. Taiwan is saying that 100 companies that were exporting agricultural products to China, restrictions have been placed on them. Now, is this symbolic or is this far more serious? But Shiv, there are threats coming Taiwan's way from Chinese diplomats. How does one read into these threats, virtual threats coming Taiwan's way?
You know, the Chinese diplomats around the world are usually pretty irresponsible in the things they say. The guy sitting in Karachi is saying, wait and watch, then he deletes his tweet and says the reunification of Taiwan is going to be accelerated now. You know, all of these things can be looked at as psychological warfare. But the point is, I think the world agrees and is pretty unanimous that any reunification of Taiwan may have been unrealistic for 73 years, but under the current Chinese leader, Xi Jinping, it has become much more of a possible kinetic threat, the possibility of actual conflict that entails the attempted reunification of Taiwan with the rest of China. But having said that, you pointed to the economic sanctions, the trade punitive actions that China has taken and probably will take against Taiwan, maybe even the United States amidst a larger trade war. But the fact is, China has specifically talked about resolute military actions, Gaurav.
Yes.
It's talked about, retaliatory strikes, which is what the Chinese media is reporting. And as you know, the Chinese media is only an organ of the, of the Communist Party government in China. They've got their aircraft crossing the Taiwan Strait. They've got aircraft buzzing in that area. They've got, so-called scheduled military drills that are taking place in the South China Sea. And starting on August the 4th, that's tomorrow, they will also have 6 drills, literally encircling Taiwan. It doesn't get more direct than that. There's an air of threat, there's an air of intimidation, but will it actually result in some kind of a strike, some kind of hard action compared to what has been threatened remains the real picture.